So, friends, welcome back to Hobby Vomit. It's me, Matt, and I'm very excited today to be doing another book review by the King himself, Stephen King's Revival. Yes, just finished this book up a few days ago, and I am super stoked to talk about it. If you're new to the channel, welcome. The way that we review books on this channel is we use our BARF system, which is 4 separate categories that we will be scoring. B, which is believable and how believable are the characters are in their setting. A is appeal, how appealing was the book or what makes the book appealing. R is rhythm, that deals with the plotting and the pacing of the book. And then F is feeling, how did the book make me feel? If it made me feel anything at all. And then at the end of that, so I'll go through each of those 4 categories in a spoiler-free way, score them out of 5, and then after that I will give you the average for the book out of 5, and then I will pitch the book to you and to let you know if the book might be for you or not for you. And then I'll go into some spoilers and talk about my experience with the book without having to worry about spoilers. So yeah, let's get right into it. Revival by Stephen King. I'm going to do what I always do and read the back of the book. So, Revival. The new minister came to Harlow, Maine when Jamie Morton was a boy doing battle with his toy army men on the front lawn. The young Reverend Charles Jacobs and his beautiful wife brought new life to the local church and captivated their congregation. But with Jamie, he shares a secret obsession, a draw so powerful it would have profound consequences 5 decades after the shattering tragedy that turned the preacher against God, and long after his final scathing sermon. Now Jamie, a nomadic rock guitarist hooked on heroin, meets Charles Jacobs again. And when their bond becomes a pact beyond even the devil's devising, Jamie discovers that revival has many meanings. So yeah, that is what Revival is about. Now, you may have heard me say on this channel before, I don't normally read the back. That's the first time I've ever read the back of that book. And yeah, I don't know. There's just something about discovering on your own. I'm assuming if you're here, you're going to be listening to what this book is about anyways, so you probably kind of came in knowing that you were going to get some, not spoilers, but just the synopsis of the book. So, yeah, they nailed it. They nailed it with the back of the book. It's a little revealing, but that's okay. So, yeah, let's get right into the BARF review. So, believable. I scored this a 5 out of 5. I think this is some of Stephen King's best character work that I've read. He's always incredible at character work, just like normal. But man, the characters in this book were perfect. I think they were just truly, fully realized characters. You're following Jamie throughout his entire life, from, like the book said, when he was a young boy playing soldiers, and then 5 decades. And by the end, I just felt like Jamie was a real person, and I truly connected with him. And yeah, it was crazy reading somebody's entire life and feeling like I was there. So, I think that just is a credit to Stephen King's character work. It's insanely good. Villain, incredible character work, just like normal. And then, yeah, surrounding cast as well. I think all great characters. So, I think all the decisions they made in the moment all felt real. Even in a book that is not super grounded in reality. So there's a lot of dealing with addiction in this book, a lot of dealing with religious fallout, and a lot of dealing with grief. And I think that King handles this super, super well through his character work. And I know Stephen King was an addict himself, so I think it's probably pretty easy for him to write, but man, he just writes it so well. It's crazy. So believable. If you want believable characters, I think this is some of Stephen King's best that I've read. I've not read, a ton of Stephen King, but one of the best for me. And then we're moving into appeal. This also scored a 5 out of 5. So what made this book appealing to me? Amazing character work, incredible villain, like a great, super memorable villain that you almost want to root for him a little bit. Like you get why he's doing what he's doing, and you want to follow him, and you are excited for him to be on the page. He's not just like a mustache twirling villain that shows up just to give our protagonist something to fight or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, he feels like a real person doing what he's doing for believable reasons. So I think that is very appealing to me. It's got some incredible horror elements, which, Stephen King is known for his horror, but I almost think Stephen King's non-horror stuff is written better than his horror works. But I think this is an exception. I think this is a horror book, and the horror elements are excellent. Some truly horrifying stuff goes on in this book. It was page turning from page 1 to the end. He has a way of making slowness still feel like it's page turning. I know some people don't love when he meanders a bit, maybe, or does just talks about like the town, or there's a whole like 50-page chapter that's just coming of age in this book. And you know what? No horror elements, just a coming of age, not just and it was one of my favorite chapters. It was page turning to me. I just couldn't stop. I was sucked into the book and felt like I was there. And to me, I think that's the real thing that makes King shine, is that boring and slow don't have to be the same thing. Like, he writes slow, but he writes slow incredibly well to where I don't care that it's slow. Stephen King could write about probably anything, and I would be in it, because the way he writes is just so conversational. It feels like I'm in a room and a buddy is telling me a story. Felt like Jamie was just sitting in the room telling me his tale, and I was here for it. I was super captivated. And then the biggest thing, another thing King is known for is he can't write endings, apparently. I've not experienced that myself, but I will say this is one of the better endings I've read of his. It's a really hard-hitting, solid ending. So if that's something that worries you, and you are just looking in maybe to get into Stephen King, I think this is a great first book. In fact, this was my buddy's first Stephen King book, and I actually haven't talked to him about it just yet, but we've been checking in throughout the book, and he was absolutely loving it, I think. So, and the ending is really solid. So I would be very surprised if that changed, but I think this is a good pickup if you are new to Stephen King. So yeah, that's the appeal. I think it's got everything you want out of a horror book. Great horror elements, but also great character work to support that. It's not just scary. You care for these characters and you fear for these characters because you're so attached to them. And I think that's what makes good horror great. So moving on to rhythm, I gave this a 4.75 out of 5. So just barely missed the mark. Really, on any other day, I think it's a 5 out of 5. But I guess if I'm trying to be critical here, I think it's very, very well paced. This is, again, it's not that big of a book. It's about, 500 pages? No, not even 400 pages. 400 pages or so. And you're getting told that Jamie's entire life, basically. And it's done incredibly well. So really, technically, it's fast paced if you're thinking about that way. Because normally, like, a book takes place over like a week or something of somebody's life. So this is his whole life, and man, it's just paced super, super well. In a way that I felt connected to him with all the plot points when he did decide to like drop us in. So in the beginning of the book, basically we're being told this from Jamie in his old age, and which is not normally a writing style that I've seen with King, where it's like a first person. But the first person worked really well. And in the beginning, Jamie is telling us, he's like, yeah, I ran into this man multiple times throughout my life. He's just that guy you run into multiple times throughout your life. And this is the story of my guy that did that, who is Jacobs. And yeah, I just feel like our drop in and drop out moments with Jamie when he decides to tell us the important parts of his tale all felt really good. And sometimes it doesn't have anything to do with Jacobs. And I just think it's very, very well paced. Plot points were great. There's a very slow drip of horror and dread throughout it, and I think that is perfectly paced. It just feels like the dread is building. It's building. It's a huge build-up. And I think it delivers at the end, which is great. The reason I got a 0.25 is there's only 14 chapters in this book. They're big chapters. And there was one chapter that wasn't my favorite. I think every other chapter I was glued glued to the page and just couldn't stop turning the page. There was one chapter that I don't necessarily know if it felt necessary, or at least as long as it was, but it was still a good chapter. I mean, it's like I'm barely giving a little dink for it. So 0.25, I guess I need to be critical somewhere. So that's the critical error that Stephen King made. So that's Rhythm, 4.7 out of 5. Still, still great. And then Feeling, 5 out of 5. I mean, what more can I say? I felt pure terror. I felt pure dread. I felt grief. I felt sadness. I felt pure joy and nostalgia in this book. And I went through. He takes us through the ringer. I mean, I felt everything in this book. I was laughing. I don't think it was sad enough to. It didn't make me cry, but it almost made me cry of like joy in moments of just pureness. Specifically in the coming of age chapter, it just was so wholesome and real. I just was happy. I was just so happy. It was like, it almost moved me to tears. And there's another chapter later on where he's just visiting with family, and it's just a nice chapter. And yeah, I just think he did it really well. So I felt everything in this book, which I wasn't really expecting going in. I just knew it was supposed to be a horror book. I didn't really know too much more about it. But yeah, 5 out of 5. So let me go to my score and sell. So I take the average of those 4 scores, divide by 4, and that gave us a 4.93 out of 5. And on this channel, I always round up to the next 0.25, which means Revival by Stephen King gets a 5 out of 5 from me. Pretty damn near perfect book. There's it really is. I think I've only read about 20 Stephen King, and 7 of those are The Dark Tower. So really, if I had to do like a top 3, I would put Dark Tower as a whole as one. This would be in my top 3 right now. I absolutely loved it, and I just was so impressed, especially because this is a later Stephen King book, and I've been reading some of his later stuff, and while I think he's gotten better as a writer, I don't know if the storytelling is as in up my alley. He does a lot more crime work, and like that's just not my jam so much. Still, I think you could tell he's mastered his craft. But this was just a horror book, and it was awesome. So my sell is, if you want a Stephen King horror book that's actually scary, that sticks the landing, that also has incredible character work and characters that you truly fear for because you're so connected to them, this is it. This is it. I'm not going to talk too much about the horror elements because I think it's a spoiler. And what I will say is, do not look anything else up. Don't look anything up. Just go read this book. I think you'll be hooked. I was hooked by the first chapter, but don't expect. It's not like a jump scare movie or anything like that. It's a slow, just dreadful horror. And yeah, I still think it's excellently paced. If you've never read Stephen King and you're wondering if this is a good place to jump in, I think it is. I mean, again, like I said, it's my buddy's first time reading Stephen King. I think he loved it. So if you love Stephen King but are worried about his newer works, again, I think it's an excellent, excellent book. So yeah, 5 out of 5 for me. And now I want to talk a little bit about some spoilers. So if you've not read this book, please just go read this book. If there's ever been a book where even if you don't care about spoilers, just stop watching and go read this book. It's not that long of a book. I think you will be glad that you didn't know what was coming. And then let's get into spoilers. So here we go. Spoilers. So I've been kind of trying to figure out what I want to do with spoilers, because I find myself, when I'm just talking to myself here, almost just like recapping the book, especially during I haven't mastered my craft of reviewing media yet. I really like having multiple people. That's why I like our movie discussions, because I can kind of bounce around and bring things and get different perspectives and all that. But also I find myself, when I finish a book, I immediately want to go to YouTube and hear people gush about why they loved it or their favorite parts. And a lot of times I'll just find spoiler-free reviews, only spoiler-free. And so as someone that's read the book, I don't need a spoiler-free review necessarily. Like, I am interested to hear what you have to say as a spoiler-free review, but then I also want to know, like, what was your favorite? A lot of times you can't say your favorite parts or your favorite characters because maybe the character's not introduced till halfway through the book or something like that. So I haven't figured out what I'm going to do. I was thinking, like, maybe instead of going through these categories again, I would just do, like, I didn't do it for this one, but thinking for the future, just, like, maybe, like, a top 5 favorite moments, and that will be my spoiler part. But for now, I just wrote a couple little notes of things I did want to talk about. I did want to talk about the scariest moments for me, and just some great pivotal moments. So the car crash when Jacobs loses his wife and son, it was horrific. You kind of, I don't know. I guess I kind of guessed something was coming. Especially, I think there's a lot of like kind of parallels to Pet Sematary a little bit in this book. It just gave me like a modernized Pet Sematary vibe with like the dealings of grief and things like that. But the car crash was horrific, especially because like I think he does like the bait and switch so well, because he talks about the guy that ends up having the seizure and crashing into them head on. But he talks about putting he's starting his drive, and he has like his potato planter hooked up to the back. So I was like, what's up? You know, I know it's like farming gear, but I didn't know what it was. So I had to look it up, and I was like, oh no, this is horrifying looking. What's going to happen with this potato planter? Like, how are they going to crash into the back of it and it's just going to like rock them? Nope. Potato planter has absolutely nothing to do with it. They just crash head on. And yeah, it's a horrific moment because like you get to see it from the point of view of someone else just arriving on the scene, and his wife is like holding her dead child at this point and like screaming about like why about just like to help. And I think the most horrifying moment was when like basically this like ex-Marine runs up and he just runs by them. He runs by the wife holding the bloody, I think she's missing an arm and he's dead in her arms. And the dude just runs by them. And the woman that you see it from her point of view, she's like, what are you doing? Help them. And just so like, it's the casual nature of it. He's just like, they're done for. I'm going to go see if this other guy can at least be saved. And just like the reality of that hits so hard. And yeah, it's just, I think that is real. Like I think someone that has been prepared for that environment, like an ex-Marine probably, he just saw and knew they were dead. Even though they were one of them was technically alive right there, they were not going to make it. So he's just like, I'm just going to ignore them and go try and save somebody, which is the right thing to do. But just that casual nature of it was so horrifying to me. So yeah, the car crash, and then when Jacobs actually goes and sees to identify them, and he's just screaming like, what happened to my son's face? And that part's scary. The actual scariest part of this book for me, and I don't know why, it just terrified me, was Hugh, when Jamie and Hugh are sharing their stories about their after effects. And so Jamie's having these after effects where he wakes up and he's just like stabbing himself with like a fork or a needle or a pen or something. And you think it's like maybe him dealing with like the post-addiction to heroin or whatever. And it's creepy. It's for sure. It's a creepy image. But Hughes is the real creepy one for me. And he's just like, yeah, he's got two of them. So one of them is like the prismatics. And he basically is seeing into this other world, and he sees all these colors, and he kind of sees the blend of our reality and the horrifying reality which we find out about at the end, which is scary. And all of it's scary, but something about him, he's just like, I would wake up, I would just basically come to and just be standing in a corner. And like, I don't know what it is about that, but like, I just can't imagine like waking up in the middle of the night and just being standing in a corner, facing the corner, is horrifying to me. I don't know if it's because I watched Blair Witch as a kid, and that scene in Blair Witch where something similar happens is just burned in my brain, but there's something about that is so creepy to me because it's not something you would do, I think, as a sleepwalker, and it gives like that puppeteering vibe of like, oh, just like, what were you doing just standing in the corner? I hate it. It creeps me out. So I don't know why that's the creepiest moment for me, but that is the creepiest moment. Um, then another really crazy moment was when he heals Astrid, and her like basically he shocks her. He does the thing, and she kind of like goes unconscious. And then when she comes to, her eyeballs come down, but he like made it to where they like rolled down one at a time, and like, ugh, that was a creepy visual. I thought it was great. And then she talks about Mother coming and the door with Ivy that's locked to this world, but she's coming, and great moment. And then we gotta talk about the end. The whole end, the entire ending was great and terrifying, and the ants. I think it's less about the ants. Like, I think the ants aren't necessarily scary. It is a creepy visual. Part of me almost wishes that he just said insectoid or something like that, because I think a lot of people might get put off by the ants. But it's not about that. It's about the cosmic horror nature of like these elder ones, and like just, I don't know. As someone that grew up in a religious household, there's very much like heaven, there's hell. And then as I've gotten older and become less of a religious person, there's what my reality is there's nothing, right? But at no point did I think, oh, so there's a fourth option, and it's you go to this other plane to be basically enslaved by like an insectoid race that are worshiping these elder gods, and to just be tortured forever. And like, it's awful and horrifying, and it's haunting. And yeah. That's the whole thing. It's all unknown. We don't know what happens. And so, while it's unlikely, I will say it's unlikely. Is it that much more unlikely than like the way that we describe hell? Not really, to me. So it's pretty scary, but it is just something that a couple of people on the Discord have talked about, how like they'll just think about that at night sometimes. I'm like, yeah, I see that. It's pretty haunting. So, yeah, especially like the giant leg coming down from the sky with like the claw, and like the human heads just like gaping in horror and screaming on the end of the claw. And then when it comes out of, what was her name? The person that they actually like revive, Mary something. Mary Faye. Is it Mary Faye? Yeah, Mary Faye. When they actually do the whatever they do, I guess technically it is the revival. It's such a nice blend of like Frankenstein and Lovecraft. I think he does some nods to both, which is nice. Definitely more Lovecraftian, but I like the nods to Frankenstein as well. And that's definitely where I thought it was going, more in a Frankenstein route, not into I want to see what the afterlife is. And I really loved that angle. I thought it was really cool. And then, yeah, some just great emotional moments for me. The entire coming of age chapter, I thought, was one of the best chapters of a book I've ever read. I just thought it was perfect. As someone that also got into playing music in my high school years, I just felt like I could really connect with Jamie, and I thought he just wrote it so well. You get the family dynamics, you get the relationship dynamic, you get just him growing up and going to college then, and just, yeah, I just think it was a masterful chapter. Very long chapter, but man, I just couldn't put it down. Yeah, it was almost like emotional for me, just like the nostalgia and just, yeah, I don't know. And then not so emotional, like the car crash is emotional, like the Jacob's losing his family, it is emotional. But one loss that happens in the book that I think hits really, really hard for me was Claire. And it's just I mean, the whole thing is like, right, the thing that part of which makes the ending scary is that all these innocent people, like Jacob's wife and son, and Claire, who is murdered by her husband, way too soon, they're just off getting tortured in this other realm. Too bad, so sad. Don't care if you were a good person or bad person, Birdson, or if you were taken too soon, or doesn't matter. We're all destined to just meet Mother, and that is horrifying, and that makes the ending terrifying. But even before that, just Claire's story, I think the way that he weaved her from the beginning, it was this great, very lovable older sister, and then he kind of just he does the classic Stephen King thing where he just casually drops that she died at some point, and you're like, wait, what happened to Claire? And he definitely mentions that like he would never forgive her husband, and so like you kind of can intuit that it's either some kind of abuse, maybe he got her addicted to drugs, or what ended up happening, which was I think it was actually abuse, and then she leaves and then he kills her or something along those lines. And it's just sad, very sad. And then those were probably the two. Whoa, when he comes home, when Jamie comes home I think it was for Andy's granddaughter's birthday, but also like the anniversary of some wedding. I can't remember, but he basically sees his family for the first time in a long time, and it's just a wholesome, beautiful moment. I mean, he has moments with all three of his brother, or with the two of his brothers, with Andy and Terry, and I think they're both beautiful in their own way. And it just was. Oh no, no, sorry, it wasn't Andy and Terry. It was Con. And was there 5 of them? I know 2 of them died, but I almost want to say there was 3 more. Andy, Con. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Whoever was there, it just was like a very beautiful moment, especially with like the grandniece took to him a lot and had like Claire's eyes, and it just was a very nice moment. And I think that's another strength of Stephen King's is that whenever I start his books, I'm like, give me the bad stuff. Like I want the gore and I want all the horror elements. Like, and then I get so attached to the characters that we start to get to the climax, and I'm like, Stephen King, just let them live. Just let them live out the rest of their days happy. We don't need to touch on the horror again. Like, I just want them to be happy. And that's how I felt in this book. I wanted the book to end right there. Happy ending. Let him be with his family. But, oh man, it just, it doesn't go that way. One thing I think I could see some people disliking is Jacob's actual death was very, not anticlimactic, but, you're almost thinking it's going to be, I guess it is fairly horrifying. Like the big claw comes out of Mary Kay's mouth with Tagalong Mori, his dead son's face screaming on it, and I can't remember. I think it grabs hold of him and it basically like gives him a big shock. I think he dies. It doesn't exactly say how he dies. I think it's like a shock or like a shock or fright. He just kind of freezes up and dies. It's not like a brutal like Hellraiser kind of death or anything, but I felt like it was appropriate. And then the actual, the ending, which is post all of this, and just Jamie living with this knowledge. There's nothing you can do about it, right? He's just living out the rest of his days trying to forget, because he knows sooner or later he's going to go meet Mother, and so is everybody he's ever loved. And cherish the rest of his life on Earth. That is my Revival review. I loved this book. I couldn't put it down. 5 out of 5. Top 3, I think, right now, Stephen King book for me. If you read it and you loved it or you hated it or whatever, I would love to hear what you thought about it, because I want to gush about it. It just was such a great read. So that's it for me this time. I will hopefully be back with more Stephen King books soon. I'm hoping to do a Stephen King like ranking of all the books I've read of Stephen King so far. So I'm Matt. This is Hobby Vomit. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.